Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Milk the Cow podcast. This episode is with Paul Daly from Socialist Think Tank. We're specifically focusing it around, he was asked to go for selection for Labour MP in Sedgefield, which is Tony Blair's former constituency. Before we get into it, before I bring Paul in, just do some of the usual. If you just bear with us. Please subscribe to the Cow Daily YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Cow Daily. We're trying to get the channel monetized for about third of the way there, something like that. So if you would watch all of these, if you want to watch them on there, if not, you can get them on the audio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you do that, please leave a nice 5-star review because we're trying to dominate the CIA in the charts as per. Also, if you want to support our work, go to patreon.com/Cow Daily. That's patreon.com/Cow Daily. Also, links in the description if you want to leave a one-off donation for work via PayPal. Nice one. Without further ado, we'll bring Paul in. Paul, how you doing, mate? You good?
I'm good, yeah. I'm pretty happy.
Good. So you look it as well, aye? You do. First thing, mate, is like, where do we even start with this? I tell you what, I've mentioned that already in the intro that what we're generally going to talk about. What I'm really interested in is like, how did you get into politics at first, and like, where did it start? How old were you?
So like, I guess for me it was through the trade union movement. So what happened is I was kind of like dragged into being a trade union rep. I'm a teacher, so I started off being a trade union learning rep at my first school, and that was really fun. What I was doing is I was organising things like football tournaments and stuff like that to get into, just to get people involved and get them something out of the union and try to get organised really. So I was really into the organising side. Then I moved schools, and then within about like 2 weeks of me moving there, one of the teachers there tragically took his own life because of something that had happened to him in school.
Right.
And they asked me to be the rep, and I was kind of thinking, well, I don't ever want that to happen again. I think it was a completely avoidable situation. And I thought, had I been in that position, I wouldn't have allowed it to happen. Who knows what he would have done otherwise, but I think I would have been there to give him the help that he could have got through the trade union movement. So it's kind of a really sad way of getting into it. But then I became the trade union rep. I saw what kind of damage they were doing, like what kind of damage the coalition were doing. So this was around like 2010. And I saw what the coalition were doing to education. And I ended up like kind of winning an award for the trade union, and then going to the TUC and kind of thinking, okay, maybe I should get a little bit more politically involved. But at the time, the Labour Party was pretty bleak. It wasn't really my kind of politics. It wasn't hopeful. It wasn't really challenging anything. It was just like the status quo, really. Like I'd always voted Labour and stuff like that, like most working class-ish people. I think some people might argue I'm not working class being a teacher or the son of teachers, but you know.
Well, if you're looking at it monetarily, not these days, mate. Everybody's working class now.
Yeah, if you're half a paycheck away from destitution, you're working class. But and I think that's most of us now.
Yeah.
But so then after a couple of years of trying to fight through the trade union movement and doing lots of anti-racism work and all the stuff that you do, I just thought I'll give this Labour Party stuff a bash. I'll join in 2014. I was inspired to join by those controls on immigration mugs. I was like, I need to get in there and sort this out because that's disgusting.
Right.
So
okay.
I think
was
I have
this
a
when
hero complex.
Ed Miliband was he already leader by this point?
Yeah, he was the leader, and it looked like, they might win, they might not. And I was thinking, but I don't want to see a Labour Party that is going around like trying to spout right-wing rhetoric in order to get elected. I don't want to see dog whistle racism in the Labour Party. So I kind of joined with my eyes open, thinking the Labour Party is not what I wanted it to be, but I'll get in there. And I found loads of like-minded people. And then there was the whole Corbyn thing, and like I was sort of vaguely involved in organising, certainly for his not on his part, but within the Northeast for like his re-election in 2016. I was involved there. And then in 2017, I ended up chair of Sedgefield CLP, and I've been there ever since. So kind of, I kind of keep getting asked to do these things. I got there by accident, really. So
just kind of like by accident all the way through, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice one, aye. I mean, also as well, you set up something called Socialist Think Tank. Do you want to give a bit of an idea what that is?
Yeah. So again, like I think we lack a lot of education when it comes to what socialism is, or like, you know, we all disagree with what socialism is as well. So what we wanted to do is create something where we could detoxify the word socialism. So we've got like loads of working class normal people to come on to our podcast and talk about what socialism is to them. So that's basically what it's about. It's trying to detoxify the word socialism so that the next time someone like Corbyn comes along, they can't beat him with that stick. They can't be like, oh, you're a socialist, and people don't really understand what it is. If people say, well, actually, the person who lives next door to me is a socialist and he's dead nice, he does all this stuff, and the woman down the road, you know, she's always helping people and she's a socialist, and actually I think I'm a socialist. And the more I talk to people about it, you'll get people who voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 who go, oh, do you know what? I think I'm a socialist. The way you describe it.
I saw like a poll recently. It was probably YouGov, something like that, and it was talking about how conservative. If you look at like Corbyn's policies from 2019, 2017, and put the Tory vote as something like 60-70% of those are like well into those policies. I just want to like say something for visual people. You can't barely see us. It's because there's windows at the other side of where I'm recording, and there's no curtains, and I've never recorded at this time, so apologies. But like, you know, I'm not the best looking kid, so it's probably for the best. So I just got that out of the way. So, with like, obviously, you wanted to detoxify just the term socialism and what that is, and try and explain that to people.
Yeah, and also like, just I don't know. There's a bit of socialism where it's like it seems to be a lot of people who are from university doing what people might call student politics, which is great. I think students are great. You know, you do a lot of good political work there, but it's not what I think we see often in the mainstream. Like, we see people who, you know, maybe do speak above people quite a lot. And you know yourself, like, you know, you can use all this terminology, you can read as much as you want, but it doesn't mean anything. You know, those long words don't give more meaning to what it is. People can understand what socialism is without having a load of long words. So we just tried to do something really down to earth that anyone could understand. And also, like, you know, we have live questions in the middle of the show, like you do when you do your live podcast, and
Sure.
people can feel free to ask what you're talking about. You know, like if we ever go into jargon, people could say, I don't know what you're talking about, and we'd stop and we'd go back and start chatting.
Well, exactly. I mean, whenever we contact a guest and we'll have a dialogue with them before we do the thing, we always talk about like how we don't assume knowledge, and can we just like pitch it at a level that people can actually understand instead of using all kinds of terminology. So it's refreshing that you're doing that. You know what I mean? You moved to Sedgefield. Where did you move from to go before you moved like to Sedgefield constituency?
I moved about like 4 miles, so I was in Easington constituency, and and I was living in Easington itself, and now I live in Wingate, which is like right on the edge of Sedgefield constituency, so it's in East Durham. I grew up around here. I grew up in like Peterlee, and you know, bleak place. But
I used to say a last from Peterlee, actually.
Did you?
Oh man, years ago, like years ago.
But yeah, so you know, it's full of lovely people and stuff like that. But there's just not much going on, is there? And there's not much going on in the pit villages as well. But you know, nice people, not much going on for them. And given that we're like Tony Blair's old constituency, it's amazing how not good Sedgefield became because of that. You know, I think it was better under New Labour, even though like it could have been far superior. But you know, I don't think. Sorry, my dogs are shouting.
It's all right, mate. I've not got headphones in. Mine would kick off if they could hear them.
But I think they could have done a lot more. I don't think the area's been particularly well looked after. So yeah, I live in Wingate, which is right in the northeast corner of Sedgefield, and Sedgefield's quite big, you know, as a rural area, really.
Well, let's set the scene a bit, because people might not be aware of the MPs in Sedgefield since 1983. So 1983, Tony Blair, Labour. 2007 by-election, Phil Wilson, and 2019, Paul Howell, Conservative. Do you want to give a bit of insight into that, Paul, and just let we know what the process of that was? Because I'll pull up here as well. There's some election results, and I think it might give further insight. So we can see Paul Howell, that was in 2019, Conservative, 19,609. Phil Wilson, 15,096. Just moving on one more. Tony Blair, 1997, he had 33,526. Obviously, that's a huge difference. So what on earth went on there?
I think people got quite, I don't know, disgruntled with the Labour Party locally. Like what I was saying there about Sedgefield didn't suddenly all of a sudden become a much better constituency. It was better, but was it better? Like, did it improve as much as London? I don't think so. I think it's been entirely left behind. Tony Blair was, I'm told, a good constituency MP. He would come to all the meetings, even when he was Prime Minister, with his entourage and everything like that. So as critical as I could be about like him invading Iraq and all those things, at least he was a decent constituency MP, more so than Phil Wilson was.
That's not the sure start defense, is it?
You know what? We're clutching at straws about anything positive at the moment, but like, you know, like he did his job. He turned up. He actually cared what members thought, and he influenced them. And I think he had that weird charisma that he had, that weird,
he certainly has
that dodgy smile thing that he did that people thought was charismatic. But I think people were brought in by that. But what I'm told as well by local members is he would never have done what Keir Starmer's done. That's really telling for me. And we've got like the original Blairites who will literally do anything. Like they'd sell the nanny, you know, in order to have power. But you know, I don't think Blair would have gone as far as Keir Starmer's gone.
So for people who haven't followed any of this at all, what has Keir Starmer done?
He's basically made the Labour Party completely miserable. Like, you know, him and David Evans, the General Secretary of the Labour Party, completely shut down debate over Corbyn. So as soon as they kicked Corbyn out of the party for that period of time, when he made the statement about the AHRC, which said that it was used by political enemies or something like that, which for me, like I'll get kicked out for this, but I had people who were far right tweeting at me with Israel flags in their bio, tweeting at me that I'm an anti-Semite. I've never been anywhere near an anti-Semite. So if those people aren't using that to attack the left wing for political reasons, when they do not care a single bit about Jewish people, I'm sorry, they were doing it because they wanted to attack the left. And they saw me as a left winger. That was nothing to do with Jewishness. That's nothing to do with protecting Jewish people. So, you know, it was used for political purposes by some people. And that's what Jeremy Corbyn said. That's what the Ford report says.
Yes.
And yet Jeremy Corbyn was kicked out. From then on, you weren't allowed to mention Jeremy Corbyn in meetings. Our meetings went from being these really friendly, vibrant places where we could talk about anything, but we'd do it in a respectful way.
And what kind of time period was this? Like just after Jeremy was kicked out, yeah? So that would be what, a couple of years now, yeah?
Lockdown-ish. So we'd sit there on Zoom meetings and I'd say, well, we're not allowed to talk about anything. We're not allowed to talk about this. We're not allowed to talk about that. Because we had to be careful not to be, you know, have the CLP taken over by Labour North and suspended for mentioning Jeremy Corbyn's name. Honestly, it was ridiculous. It was like that Harry Potter thing when you couldn't say Voldemort. You know, it was. That's we
ironic when you remember the
Corbyn,
Newsnight
Voldemort.
end sequence when he was Voldemort. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's fucking crazy this though. For like, you know, I'd sacked off the Labour Party a while back. I obviously launched it in, and I would have been kicked out by now, obviously, because you know, we were targeted to bits before both elections, 2017, 2019. I've talked about that a lot. So if anybody wants to know, just go to previous episodes. We've talked about that on and off. What do you think? I mean, have you seen the Labour files on Al Jazeera? Have you watched it?
Yeah, I've seen them. And
What's your takeaways from that? What do you think? What do you think went on there?
I knew
Evidentially,
about half the people because some of them have been on Socialist Think Tank. Some of them are just friends that have been in the anti-racist movement for years. Some of them are people I've bumped into at events like the World Transformed. And I knew them. I know them not to be liars. And they're on there telling their story. And the problem for me is it wasn't a surprise, like not even in the slightest. There was nothing. It was shocking, but I wasn't surprised by any of it. And then you see it all there. And the fact that we're so numb to it, like I was sitting there watching it like, okay, that's true. That's true. That's true. And they were talking about like David Evans or someone involved in Croydon Labour Party hacking into journalists' emails and things like that, and doing like illegal things. And I was like, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds plausible. And this is a huge problem if you've got a political party who is supposed to be the working class party, which they clearly aren't anymore. But maybe they never were. Maybe I was a victim of Labourism as much as anyone else. You know, Ralph Miliband talks about Labourism quite a lot. But it just wasn't a shock at all and completely plausible.
Well, yeah, quite. And I think more and more people are realizing that. So, I mean, my takeaway from it was, like, again, as you say, nothing that I didn't already know, but it puts it all together in one place. How have you found? Have you spoke to any of like the sort of Blairite type people about it? Have any of them seen it? What's their reaction to it?
So Blairite people, that's an interesting one. Who are Blairite people? In my experience, there's about 5 of them in Sedgefield.
In Sedgefield, yeah.
Yeah. Like they were the original 5 who brought Tony Blair in. Hardly anyone likes them. They're really, really deeply unpopular. But what they get is these people who mythologize them. So they're these really, really nasty, aggressive people. Like there's a fellow who used to be the chair of the party before I took over, and he lost to me because he was so horrible. Like a lot of people thought it was a left-right thing, but it was a left-right thing, but a lot of it was a horrible person, nice person thing. And he would turn up to meetings and go, right, none of us want to be here. Sit down, shut up. Any of you say anything, I'm slinging you out. And apparently that came from a militant handbook that he had, which is really interesting that one of the original Blairites used that in CLP meetings.
Is this what Michael Crick wrote about in a book back in the day? And some passages came out recently where it was like he was talking about, he transcribed the militant handbook and spoke about how it was used back then. For people who don't know, Kinnock, militant, Liverpool, that kind of thing. Look into that history of Labour Party. So this help us out here, right? Talk us through that bit again. I'm struggling to get my head round what the hell's going on with this party now. Talk us through what the fuck is going on there.
Right, so we've got these like awful people. So in 2017, when I took over as chair of the party, what happened was Phil Wilson, who was the MP at the time, decided that he could only win by completely throwing Corbyn under the bus. He hated Corbyn anyway. And you look back at I've looked back at minutes of meetings going back
and
years.
And this was 2019, yeah?
Yeah, well, 2017 actually.
2017 as well.
So he hated Miliband, he hated Gordon Brown, and he wasn't an MP before that because he replaced Blair. So like he hated every Labour leader that there was, and he hated Corbyn as well. And he wrote a letter to every single constituent and printed it out, and was saying about how much he hated Jeremy Corbyn, and if you vote for me, it's not a vote for Jeremy Corbyn. I'll make sure I get rid of him, and all these things. And he used like Labour Party members' money to do this, and we're all horrified. We're all horrified. We'd been out campaigning with him. But while we'd been campaigning with him, the people who'd been working on his team had been saying to people, right, if you mention Corbyn, you're out. Someone had turned up with a Corbyn badge on and they'd screamed at them and told them to go home when they were out to campaign for Phil Wilson.
Really?
Yeah. And then one day I had the displeasure of door knocking with Phil, and he's like, he's not a nice guy, he's got this awful demeanor about him and this like kind of, I don't know, this massive chip on his shoulder. But anyway, I'm door knocking with him, And every time someone mentioned Corbyn on the door, he was saying to the guy who was writing it down, this other awful guy, was going to write that down, anti-Corbyn. But he never said that when it was anti-Phil Wilson, and he never said it when it was anti-Tony Blair. And I made my own little tally chart. It was 3 Corbyns, 5 Phil Wilsons, and 7 Tony Blairs. That was what people were saying they weren't going to vote Labour for. Right. So, this was going on for a while. So anyway, he put this awful letter out, and then people were really, really horrified. So at the AGM, I organised, I was just basically an organiser, and I organised a group of people who were really disgruntled at the way that they were behaving to stand against the CLP officers, so the Constituency Labour Party officers, and we won. And I accidentally became chair because people were like, oh, who's going to be the chair? And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be Paul because I'd done the most organising. So I kind of didn't really want to do it, but then did it. And anyway, we saw them. They all fell one by one. They're all screaming. They're all being really, really aggressive, really nasty, almost like physically threatening towards us at the meeting. And then a couple of weeks after, in the Daily Mail, actually it was a couple of months after for some reason, they went to the Daily Mail and Russia Today and the Times and said that we're a bunch of momentum thugs who'd taken over. And I don't
know, slow down a minute. Who went to the Daily Mail?
We think it was a fella named John Burton because he was quoted in the article about how awful we are and we don't know what we're doing and we've never organised anything and we're absolutely terrible. So think
who's this guy? Who's John Burton?
He's he's the guy who was Tony Blair's election agent, who's also been mythologized. I've watched videos of him as well, so I got quite into the history of it all. And there's this brilliant video. Remember when they used to say that we thought Corbyn was Jesus or a cult or whatever, or the Messiah? This guy literally said, and he used to say that about Corbyn, that we were saying that about Corbyn. He said, people used to think Tony Blair could walk on water, but the thing is, he actually could. Tony Blair could actually walk on water. And
right, I'm gonna have to slow you down again. Has he actually said that really about Tony Blair? Said that?
Yeah, I'll find it on YouTube at some point. But yeah, he said that Tony Blair can literally walk on water. He actually can. So he thought that Tony Blair was, and they're all deeply religious as well. So they're all Catholics, which I never used to my advantage. I'm a Catholic as well, but I never got into those circles because I'm not a hideous ghoul. But they really thought that he was Jesus or the Messiah or whatever.
Can I just clarify something? Are you still the chair of the CLP, which for people who don't know, Constituency Labour Party? Yeah.
I haven't sent my resignation letter yet, but by the time this goes out, I probably won't be. Put it that
way. Come on, that's what we're like. So, how are you feeling about doing this? Because obviously you've not resigned. You're still a member as well, obviously. So, how are you feeling about doing this and it going out?
I'm fine. To be honest, when the truth becomes a revolutionary act, you know that there's something wrong. And we've all been sitting and kind of saying, oh, shall we say this? Shall we hold our tongue here? Or, is this for the better of the party? And as a CLP chair, just like I am as a union rep, I've always behaved in a way that I think, right, I'm going to just be a bit more reserved than I would be because I'm representing other people. Yeah. And people see me as representing a solid block if they understand what the role is properly. And even when I'm speaking as an individual, I'll always say, look, I'm speaking as an individual, not as a CLP chair here, but people mix them up. So I became a bit more reserved than I would have liked to have been because I wanted to tell the truth about how I hate the hierarchy of racism within the Labour Party, how I hate the fact that left-wing Jews are being kicked out of the party left, right, and centre. It's a really big number of people, and I know Jewish people who've told me that they're scared of being within Keir Starmer's Labour Party, but that doesn't get reported because anti-Semitism is being dealt with in the Labour Party by kicking out Corbyn, which completely isn't true.
Well, I mean, the Labour files in the Ford report would say different, but I mean, how do you feel about how the difference in the mainstream media reporting around let's call it racism, because it's all racism, isn't it? So
Yeah.
like the racism that was alleged during the Corbyn era, and the racism that's alleged now, which implicates some of the people within who hold the controls of the Labour Party currently. Like what differences do you see?
It's night and day, really, to be honest. They're not reporting on anything in the Labour Party at the moment. I don't know whether it's this extreme establishmentarian thing and the fact that, like, you know, the people who end up becoming MPs become very close to the journalists who like kind of buy into their own narrative. I do think it's like the whole liking the smell of your own farts things, and they'll sit around in like in whatever you call strangers bar or something. I've never been down there, but I've heard about it. And they'll be like, oh, yes, that's what the country needs. That's what working class Britain's saying. This is it. Actually, the problem in the Labour Party is Jeremy Corbyn and what's going on there. Whereas they're completely ignoring the fact that the likes of Dawn Butler and Diane Abbott were being talked about in extremely racist terms by Labour Party members of staff. Yeah. And, you know, some of the hierarchy that's still there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it just seems to me that like people don't want to, well, the media especially, they don't want to report it in the same way. I mean, I've seen one article where Diane's quoted and she just basically says, yeah, exactly what you've just said. I mean, she's not saying anything that isn't in the Ford report. I'm deeply, deeply concerned about the direction of travel here. And also the amount of people who just want to just pretend that there isn't this hierarchy of racism that's described in the Ford report. Also, a quote that leaps out from me from Martin Ford is, it's not a welcoming place for people of colour. Yeah. And yet people want to tell me that I should vote for that. I'm a lifelong anti-racist. Like, what the fuck am I, like, I can't do that, man. And then you get called a Tory. It's fucked up and weird. And it's back to how, I remember how it was before Corbyn. Like, because I think I voted once for the Green Party in the local council elections because they stood, and that was the only time I voted. Because I was kind of I don't want to say rationalized around the time of the Iraq War. Yeah. So I hated Labour. Like I became an activist around the Afghanistan wartime, you know, and I still hate Labour now, but I joined because I thought, right, I'll put all this to one side. Something that really stuck out for me, I saw an interview recently. Owen Jones was interviewing Jess Phillips at the Labour conference, and she was trying to wind him up, going, oh, yeah, you and what, content holding the banners and all that. Listen, if I was fucking content to hold a banner, I wouldn't have joined the fucking Labour Party. And if that person then had spoken to the person I was during the time of the Afghan war, the person I was then would have slapped the person who joined the Labour Party because they couldn't have understood what I was doing. You know, like, it's not like we weren't open to these things. Like, I didn't join, like, as some kind of fucking trot or whatever they wanted to call it. I was a community worker for 23 years. Poverty, to me, has a face and a name. It's human beings. Yeah. Like, fuck all this, the poor shit. What about Big Ron down the road, or Edith, who goes to the old people's group that was set up? Do you know what I mean? It's like, fuck off. Like, I've had to hold my nose for the whole time. And now, like you, I mean, saying that, I was saying what I wanted to say within reason, like, but I did criticize Corbyn as well at the time. It wasn't without criticism, you know?
There were the things that could have been way better about Corbyn, you know, like, I don't think, the thing is with Corbyn, he didn't really want to be a leader, which is why I liked him. You know, I think it's a really weird thing to want to be the leader of a political party and the prime minister. And if someone says, well, don't really want to do that, I'm like, oh, I think maybe you should be a candidate. You know, I think maybe like the narcissism, and I got called that yesterday, by the way, narcissist, but quite a lot on Twitter. I'm going to ask you about that. Loving,
keep talking though.
People were loving me being a narcissist yesterday, but yeah, it's quite like a narcissistic thing to do, to think I'm going to lead a group of people. Like, my model is always like, you kind of lead from the middle. You might say leadery things, but don't have a leader, don't have like a figurehead. And I think Corbyn's probably a bit there as well. You know, I don't think he was ever comfortable with being a figurehead. I saw him at the gala this year, and he just said, he was like, oh, Paul, would you take a photo of me with this banner? And I was just going around taking photos of him with banners on his phone, because to be at the gala and enjoy himself and do a nice thing. And he wasn't there for publicity, and loads of people are asking him for selfies and stuff. And he really enjoys the culture that we've got here, and he really he respects it, and he doesn't think he's better than anyone else. And they couldn't get their heads around that, the establishment. Like, they had nothing on him, which is why they had to go after him in such a aggressive way.
Well, quite. And I mean, there's not one person on earth can convince me that a lifelong anti-racist and Jeremy Corbyn is in any way racist. It's fucking ridiculous. But it just shows, it's that Goebbels thing, isn't it, about the repetition of propaganda? It's like you can make people believe absolutely anything you want via consensus reality and manipulating that.
Absolutely.
And I'm pleased we're in a position now where we can talk about it, because you remember a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, you thought to have this kind of conversation, you'd get lashed off social media. When it's like, you've got like proper journalism, proper investigative units like at Al Jazeera and like some other places presenting what actually happened. Just
Isn't
on
that
the
a worry,
narcissism.
though? Isn't that not a huge worry?
What you saying?
Like, you've got as I say, like, the truth's become a revolutionary act. Like, why are we so cautious about telling the truth? Like, lots of the backlash I got like yesterday was about Julian Assange. Like, well, I don't care.
Is that why you were called a narcissist? Like,
they were just saying you can tell that you're a problematic person because you support Julian Assange. I was like, well, because I want a journalist to go free. Because
was this
he's
right?
been
Just
wrongly
slow down
imprisoned.
a minute. Was this so? Yesterday you had like interview panel for selection for Sedgefield Labour MP.
Oh no, this was on Twitter. So this is
on
like
Twitter. Got you.
Yeah. Okay. So the selection panel came on Friday. That was interesting.
Well, let's bring it to the selection panel. So, firstly, were you in a position where you were up for selection for Labour MP in what was Tony Blair's constituency, Sedgefield?
Well, so members had asked me to run, and we've been doing this for a very, very long time, very long time. Actually, a few months ago, I decided maybe not, but we went for it anyway, and we had a plan. We had backup plans and all sorts, but we thought that like I was the one who had the chance to win and actually have a socialist go into Parliament from Sedgefield. However, I wasn't particularly keen on the idea of going to Parliament and doing all that parliamentary stuff and being away from my family for 4 days a week and stuff like that. This is not an ambition of mine. This is not a career I want to do. I wanted to go and represent people because I thought I would do a decent job and I would listen to members. And that's why I applied. And trade unions were impressed with that. So I had backing from trade unions. And what you've got is you've got a long listing process. And we thought we'd really struggle to get on the long list. So we needed something called super nominations from trade unions. So trade unions and socialist societies can say, right, I want them on the long list no matter what. And I got a load of that. So I got ASLEF, TSSA, CWU, a couple of branches of them supported me, even Unison, which is supposed to be like a more right-wing union. The FBU, I absolutely love the FBU, by the way.
Firefighters,
trade union, all the unions I've mentioned are amazing. I love trade unions. And then Socialist Education Association as well, which is a socialist society, which is also part of this thing. Socialist Health Association, they all backed me to get on the long list. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm on the long list here. And then I had to work to get on the short list, which we should have been in a position to control as the left, because all our executive were left, and it was the executive who was supposed to do that. That got stitched up, but that's probably another story. But that got stitched up, and it doesn't matter now. But anyway, I was called to a long listing interview because they said that some of my social media posts had been problematic, and I
did
had
they pull them up?
Yeah.
How then? What were they?
So there's a few really silly ones, and I'll probably publish these at some point in their entirety. But the ones that they focused on was one that said, I'd tweeted, went to the gym in Hartlepool where we all talk to each other. They now hate Boris Johnson, even though many voted for him. But today the talk is about how much they hate Keir Starmer and how he's united the Tories by accepting the MP who crossed the floor.
What's problematic about that? You're expressing an opinion.
I have bad political judgment, according to them.
Why?
Because I shouldn't have addressed that. I should have said, no, it was maybe I shouldn't have I either had to be quiet and not say anything, or I had to accept that it's wonderful that a Tory is joining the Labour Party, which renders the Labour Party obsolete, you know?
Well, if that doesn't illustrate the state of the Labour Party now, I don't know what does. You are the type of person who should be a Labour Party MP if the Labour Party was, of course, what it was set up to do. And yet now it's two cheeks of the same arse once again. The arse being the establishment's arse.
It's funny as well because like they tried to like pin a lot of stuff on me from Socialist Think Tank. Some of it's really, really funny, to be honest. Some of the tweets are incredibly funny. But there was one where Socialist Think Tank had done a poll where it said, what's the best vehicle to make positive socialist change in the UK? Labour Party, new left-wing party, existing left-wing party, or non-parliamentary. And because more people voted for a new left-wing party, they said, well, you know, that poll is you endorsing a new party. I was like, no, it isn't. That's people on Twitter voting for a thing. I said, would you blame Gary Lineker for a poll the BBC put out? You know, I'm a presenter on Socialist Think Tank, you know. So they really focused on that one. And then, you know, a few other things, like I'd had socialists on there who'd been kicked out of the Labour Party.
Isn't it? I mean, they're really scraping the barrel, it seems. Yeah. You've put a poll out on the independent media platform that you founded to try and educate people about socialism and detoxify it. And that's why they're trying to stop you. I mean, I think we all know it's a load of shite. Yeah. And we're looking for things. Have you got any more though? Because these are funny as fuck.
Well, we've got one where Wes Streeton complimented Laura Kongsberg.
God, now then, right.
Strap myself in Laura Kongsberg, saying that the highest compliment I can pay Laura is that I have no idea what her personal political views are or how she votes in a general election. I'm like, really? Is that really true? So Socialist Think Tank, not me, but Socialist Think Tank, had tweeted, I see Tories walking around like Labour people. They don't see each other. They only see what they want to see. They don't know they're Tories. So the Sixth Sense quote. But like,
God,
that's funny, me. And then there was another one. Actually, one of the more concerning ones is they brought up a tweet reply to Keir Starmer. Remember when he visited the Gay Queer Church?
I do, yeah.
He visited the Gay Queer Church, and we tweeted back to him. You really are terrible at this job. Solidarity with LGBT plus people, there's nothing to cure. This is the day the Labour leader visits a Gay Queer Church.
And yet they want to talk to you about like your political judgment. And you've got the leader of the Labour Party who you've been accused of having bad political judgment around going to a fucking gay conversion church. And he's got advisors.
And then they have the gall to say, you've got bad political judgment. Like, I don't even know. Is that bad political judgment? Do they think that's bad political judgment, or do they think actually no, we're going to get the homophobes on board? Is that what they were trying to do? Is that good political judgment? Just the way they don't deal with any transphobia, just the way they don't deal with any sort of nastiness, any anti-Muslim rhetoric. They don't deal with it because maybe they think, well, actually, you know, people who hate Muslims might want to vote for us, or people who hate trans people who are bizarrely obsessed with someone else's genitalia might want to vote for us if we allow some weird people who hate trans people to be MPs. You know, it's absolutely bizarre.
The whole party's a fucking basket case, mate. And it's why we've just completely, well, obviously there's many reasons why we've completely ditched it. The lies, the duplicity, the probably squeaking in because they're not the Tories after the country collapses and changing next to fuck all. They are the party of the status quo, and they're back to serving the purpose that the Democrats serve in the United States, which is just to siphon off any kind of progressiveness into this kind of world of bureaucracy and belittlement until you just get bored and you fuck off. And ironically, that was part of what the apparent militant strategy was in the 80s, according to Michael Crick in that book that I referenced earlier. That's part of what it is, just drain the soul out of it all, you know?
Aye.
And I mean, look, let's have it right. They've been incredibly successful at it. But in mitigation, I think we'd be incredibly successful at anything if we had unlimited resources. So,
well, yeah, they hold the levers of power, so it doesn't matter. Like, truth doesn't matter. And then they're making the decisions on this. Interesting. Like I had a conversation with Michael Crick yesterday. He was interested in what had happened, and he was kind of saying, well, everywhere in the country, it's right wingers, but it's extreme right wingers, and like the question would be there, if Lisa Nandy or someone like that in the Labour Party ran as part of the broad church of would she get in now? No, is the answer to that question. She would not be getting near a selection now.
Yeah.
There are people who are soft left. So the other aspect of this is we did have backup plans that were soft left people. We thought that I might be in danger of being like carved out. So we had backup plans of people who are way, way, way less left wing than I am. But I thought actually decent people, they'll do a decent job. They might not have my politics, but they're not ghouls. They're not awful people.
Yeah.
And they were carved out as well, and they had super nominations too. So it's not just me. I'm the one who's gone public. It's not just me. There are people who are bang in the center of the Labour Party. Even like, even the way it is now, bang in the center with regards to the membership, who are getting carved out in favor of people who want to sell 2 billion's worth of housing or give 2 billion's worth of social housing to private landlords and private housing firms and make a load of people homeless in Haringey, which is the candidate that we've got now.
Like just as a question I've got for you, right? As a person who is, well, for at least the next 24 hours, the chair of the CLP until this comes out, and Labour Party member, good luck with your suspension. As that person, and as somebody who lots of unions and other people within the movement wanted to be the MP for Sedgefield, right? Do you think the Labour Party is done as a vehicle which could bring about change for everybody living in poverty in the UK? Is it over?
Yeah, I think what they've done is I'm against structures, so I always talk about structures rather than people. And the Labour Party structures are such that it is going to be almost impossible to remove those people who either work for the party, who worked against Jeremy Corbyn, or who the grandees in the party, or the people in the Lords, or whatever. Those people that are getting promoted into power, every single time the right get power, they consolidate their position. They grip onto it more and more tightly. And, the problem is, right, they need the Labour Party, the right need the Labour Party in order to pretend that they are socially progressive, in order to pretend that they want to help working class people. They need the name. They need that linked with the workers. It's called Labour. It's like I've got people who still think that Tony Blair wasn't for privatisation and wasn't, they in my local branch, they think that Tony Blair was exactly where they are in the Labour Party. He wasn't. So people will vote based upon that falsehood. But then you've got a load of people who will kill the Labour Party, will kill anything in it, and then go around. And in a way, they're more deplorable than the Tories, because they're going around wearing the dead corpse of the Labour Party as a disguise. It's like, look at
brutal
me.
Description, but so perfect.
So that's where
like John Wayne Gacy. Do you know the serial killer? He used to like make capes out of his victim's skin.
Yeah,
So,
like Buffalo Bill on Silence of the Lambs.
That's the guy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it's like at the moment. They're pretending to be this socially progressive force, but there's nothing politically left about them, and they pretend to be on the left. And they sort of not even socially progressive conservatives. Like Rachel Reeves tried to outflank Suella Braverman on the right on immigration. And she's like, oh, I can't wait for them to go off on a jet. It's my life's ambition to see a load of poor people deported to Rwanda. And it's like, and then Rachel Reeves is like, well, actually, I want that, but more than you. That is not socially progressive. And economically, the neoliberal, they are not anywhere near. There is nothing left wing. And I've just heard tonight as well, the Keir Starmer speeches that sounded more left wing were actually, they had to change them at the last minute because they realized they might be in trouble. So they used Ed Miliband's speeches instead. So Ed Miliband
leadership election, was it?
No, like last week. Do you know a conference when he sounded a bit more left wing?
Aye.
It was because Ed Miliband had written it. He doesn't believe in any of that stuff.
Well, he doesn't. I don't think he believes in anything other than personal power.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think
And the establishment. He loves the establishment.
when the leadership election happened, we came out strong against Starmer, just simply because we know people who know things and knew things, and that's all I can say. But like, I didn't say anything about what I knew. You'd never betray your sources, do you? But we knew what was going to happen, and people were just like, "Shut up! You don't know what you're talking about." All of this stuff, and I think a lot of it's down to, and like I can understand too, because people quite often want the status quo, and when things deviate from that status quo, they start flapping and want to be put back into the matrix sort of thing. I mean, you've seen that with this cost of living thing. Quite a lot of people are like, oh, well, as long as I'm all right. And I've really seen like this horrible sort of just really like a selfishness in people, which has really upset us,
Yeah.
2 seconds, my dogs are doing something. Bed. Get on your bed. Sorry about that, and sorry about that, everybody. I love them really, but like, my partner's not in the house at the minute. Normally, should have them out the back. So anyway, like, in terms of the Labour right, which is the collective term for these people, I guess. Who's next? Who's getting targeted next, in your opinion?
I think it's already happened. So I think it's the soft left are no longer getting on short
So who's
lists.
the soft left? Who's the type of people?
Again, like I would say, people like Lisa Nandy. What's happened is more and more people being pushed into the left wing bracket. So you've got people who were probably just like run of the mill, standard middle of the road Labour people, like Dawn Butler, who was very supportive of Jeremy Corbyn because she's a nice person and a good politician. And now she's labelled as a proper socialist. You know what I mean? Like within the Labour Party socialist campaign group and all that, because she's got to make those alliances because there's nowhere else to go. But she served under Gordon Brown. She was in the cabinet. She's she's not like on the left, really, like on the left of the Labour Party, really. She's just standard where you would be. Then you go slightly to the right of her, and you've got like your Lisa Nandy's and people like that, the soft left. They are being targeted currently. And then I often think, like, if we just left them alone in the Labour Party, they'd be fighting within about 3 weeks with each other, because they used to have fist fights in Newcastle, the Brownites and the Blairites. They used to like Brownites and Blairites. You couldn't put a fag paper between them politically, but they're just so full of hate that they would fight each other.
You're definitely out, You're fucking done. See ya. Come and join the cool kids on the outs, man. That's where you want to be with us.
It's where I've always wanted to be honest. But so it'll be them, and it'll be the Brownites as well. So anyone and then after that, they'll probably find, actually, if you weren't originally a Tory, then maybe the Labour Party isn't the party for you. I think maybe the trade unions, they don't seem to care if they disaffiliate at all. And that's right. That's a big deal. Like trade unions are making noise about disaffiliation.
Do you think they've got properly locked and loaded big funders? Because we've been doing a bit of work on John Armitage and been looking into that United Healthcare stuff with Wes Streeton. Also, there was a guy, I can't remember his name, Greg something. He's just given 100K to the party, and he was a Tory donor. Do you think there's more going to come out the woodwork now?
Yeah, I think it's just become like America, hasn't it? Where it's like, oh well, we've got these funders who may go between the two parties, and like in America, don't like some people say, oh, we'll give 40% to the Republicans and 60% to the Democrats, and that kind of thing. They'll split it. I think we're heading there, where again, it's the billionaires, it's the wealthiest who are going to be funding both sides. Well, both main parties. That's what they want. Really, they think the money's there, and they think also, I suppose, electorally, it's a canny strategy when you consider the billionaires own the media. So, like, in a way, maybe it's really, really clever politics to just have completely no progressive outlet if all you care about is power. So, like Phil Wilson used to always say, what's the point in principles without power? And we'd always say back to him, what's the point in power without principles? But they do have principles, don't they? They want to see their class looked after, which isn't ours.
Well, quite. exactly that. There's a few things that have popped up the last 24 hours, and I just want to get your opinion on it. It's to do with the Sam Tarry thing. I'm going to read like a couple of excerpts from his statement here. And for people who don't know, Sam Tarry, the Labour MP, was deselected. And what he's saying is, I'm utterly crestfallen by the result in Ilford South selection last night. Not for myself, but for the good people of Ilford who deserve better than to have been at the centre of a manufactured political circus. I'm extremely concerned about the result, which does not reflect the feeling my campaigners met on the ground, talking day in, day out to members, or the extensive, meticulous data we gathered on the campaign. I'm taking some time to consider what's next, but in order to be assured of the integrity of the result, I'm asking the party to share with me the full information of who cast electronic votes, by what method, and when they were cast, which I understand is available in the anonymous system. In the meantime, I'll continue to represent Ilford, blah, 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 integrity, generosity, whatever, Sam. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Sam Tarry's like one of these victims of the idea of like, he's close with Angela Rayner, and like, you know, people will comment on relationships. I think that's an awful comment on relationships, because now to do with it, he is close politically with her. And then I think he thought, well, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to be in the shadow cabinet, you know, and they've assumed the best of them. They've assumed that actually they are good faith actors. And what he's found is, like, you know, as soon as he went out on a picket line, he was sacked. They said it was because he was making up stuff on the spot, and then someone else like Rachel Reeves made something else up on the spot on the same day and wasn't sacked. And so I think he's obviously a high profile victim of basically what they did to us in Sedgefield, which is they don't want him. They don't want anyone who's got
the Labour right. Is that the collective term, the Labour right?
Well, you can call them whatever you want. You know, you could call them, you know,
James Hunt.
Yeah.
Like racing, driving.
Yeah. But they wanted rid, and that's it. And they will get rid. And they've tried to do the same to Zara Sultana unsuccessfully this time. Absama Begum, who like, you know, the Absama Begum stuff is utterly criminal. You know, it is against employment law and all sorts of things, but you're not employed as an MP, are you? But if that was an employer, I'd be all over them as a trade union rep. Like I'd be wanting millions for the way she's been treated.
And I think she's got a strong case, to be quite honest. Like,
it just depends, you know, where you're going to get who's got the responsibility for that. I don't know whether it's in legislation, whether she can get anything out of anyone, but the way the Labour Party's treated her is utterly disgusting.
I mean, do you know what the thing is with the Sam Tarry thing specifically, right? I understand, because Apsana is quite left-wing and like stridently socialist, isn't she? Whereas Sam kind of, you know, he's a bit of a weather vane. And they're moving into the people who aren't as like outwardly socialist, and as you say, into the soft left. And what is it they want? What is the end game for these people? Like, in your opinion, where does this go?
I don't know. Like, maybe they want everyone who's ever been their friend to be an MP. So maybe that's it. You know, everyone they've ever met, because they don't have that many friends. You know, like they always remind me of like the kids who weren't very popular at school, but also like, you know, the kids who weren't very popular, but it turns out they were really talented and really skillful, and you know, they've got these other things and they're actually dead good crack, but they weren't very popular at school. It's like that, but without the good crack and the talent. You know, these really deeply untalented people who've managed to find themselves doing, like, people say that it's like being a rock star for ugly people politics, don't they? So I think it's just that it's pretending to have a personality and trying to get other people who are shameless ghouls around you. You know, we can see them coming in Sedgefield, the kind of people who turned up to the meeting the other day that I wasn't allowed to go to. But I've been told about people who turned up and like active, like massive transphobes and bullies and really horrendous people who were in the Tory party or were actively supporting the Tories in 2019, creating this strange coalition. Like, so obviously the right wing of the Labour Party was very much second referendum. and they used that to try to make sure that Jeremy Corbyn was kicked out because they knew it was a bad political strategy. But now they're aligned with the Tories, who were very, very pro-Brexit. And some Tories like have locally joined the party. Some people with like hideous views are now like vice chairs of local branches and things like that. So, you know
what it is? They can have it. Like, what's next for us, though? You up for a new party? Like, what? I mean, like, surely, I'll ask everybody this who's got even a passing interest. Surely, even if it's just to generate a bit of hope and then we'll see where it goes from there, surely that's what we all should be doing.
We need to be generating some hope, but I don't know whether a political party is the way to do it. Well, our dog's setting each other
2 seconds.
Up. No worries. But like for me, it's got to be extra parliamentary at the moment. Like if there was a parliamentary vehicle to make change, it's not going to come necessarily just from the left. Like a lot of people talk about like the UKIP of the left or whatever, which maybe it could influence things, but you need someone who's going to go in there and completely reform it, and that's not going to be left. Like that's going to be a general kind of like, we hate Parliament. It's absolutely disgusting. Let's get rid of the House of Lords. Let's get rid of the Houses of Parliament and move it to somewhere and have dormitories or whatever, instead of like having the poshest places in London where everything's going to cost an absolute fortune. I think parliamentary, like we're not living in a democracy, are we?
No.
Like constitutionally, we've got a monarchy. That's not a democracy. That's where someone's born better than someone else, which again was another thing that I was really frustrated at not being able to see, while everyone's fawning over the fact that the royal family's so good and singing God Save the King.
The thing is, right, I don't think we live in a democracy, even if you just look at, like, there's many reasons why I think that, but just specifically focusing on Labour, because that's what we're talking about. It's really clear in the Ford report, the Labour files, that there was people employed by the party actively not doing their jobs during these election campaigns. Bear in mind the 2017 election campaign. I've spent the last 5 years pretty much recovering from spinal surgery and everything else that came with it. And one of the reasons was I was sitting there with a laptop on my lap in a stress position on a bed with a phone here and an iPad here, and I was working for fucking free to try and get Corbyn and the Corbyn government elected. And it had nothing to do with politics or personality, and everything to do with poverty. For me, has a face. It has a name. They're human beings. And I did see, because I just didn't think any of this was going to like happen. And then with Corbyn, when he was elected leader, I thought that's impossible. And I thought, right, I have to get behind that because the impossible might become possible. And I do think we nearly squeaked it in 2017, 2000 and something votes over 6 constituencies and whatever. And that was pretty heavy. It was a pretty heavy like propaganda campaign that was going on. 2019, much worse. But the reason that I hate the Labour Party, right, hate it, and majority of the people in it, let's have it right. There's some lovely people still in it, right? But whatever. We can say that, whatever. You're hanging around with some of the worst James Hunts on the planet. So I'm afraid there's no more sympathy. Sorry. But not sorry. Like these people, like, I don't want to be in the same country as them, never mind the same fucking political party. I don't want to be in a party that has a right wing. Because like it's not about left wing, right wing, and all that. Have you seen the fucking policies that they want? And I don't want this whole like Sure Start crochet. Oh, well, look at the Sure Start thing. Oh, we've just killed 1 million people, but they're brown, so that's fine. Don't watch that. Don't look at that. I'm not doing it, man. Like, I was nearly thrown in fucking jail because of the fucking the protests and the war. Like,
at least Corbyn apologised for it, though. We got something.
I thought it was a beautiful thing, and at the time, I thought this was a
me and Austin was screaming
change,
at him.
But there's too many people who love the flag. Or appear to anyway. And I mean, obviously, you see all the iconography at Labour conference with the Union flag.
I don't think they do. I still don't think they do. I think like there's lots of people who do, but look at the viewing figures for the Queen's funeral. Like we had to. It was forced on us to watch that funeral, and it was less than the Euros went to to actually see it in viewing figures. people weren't actually watching it, and that's people who accidentally came across it because that was all that was on telly, even on the porn channels. So no, I don't know that from personal experience. I saw something on Twitter, but
I just thought you were going to say Pornhub called Corbyn an anti-Semite,
But then so I don't think necessarily people are in the majority like massive royalists and massive flag shaggers and stuff. I think people see through it, but they feel like they have to appear to be. So, did you watch the quick? Oh, yes, I was very subservient. I licked enough boot. But like, I don't think they did. People like I've been speaking to people at my work and things, and I didn't watch a second of it. Wasn't interested. Yeah. And then other people were like, I watched it because it's a piece of history, but I don't care. I don't like the God Save the King stuff. It's really, really interesting when you speak to people on a level that, where people aren't going to judge them and people aren't watching them and people aren't saying, have you sang the national anthem today? Have you shagged the flag enough today? People aren't actually there. I think people are very different to what is portrayed.
I agree. So sadly, we've run out of time, mate. Love to have you back on, though. We'll talk things a bit
Anytime, man. We've got to do stuff together. Come on, Socialist Think Tank as well.
Oh, anytime, mate. I love to.
Yeah.
Would absolutely love to.
I'm not as posh as you're set up with the StreamYard and stuff. We just do we do some guerrilla style stuff.
Mate, I've let myself down today. We've like all this fucking. I'm lit terribly, and for the first half of this, the sun was right in my eyes, so I was like stern stare. So apologies if it looked like I was losing it,
No, it was
but
good.
we'll do it again. I'll light myself properly and stick a fucking curtain on.
Loved it.
All the best, mate, and obviously anything we can do to support and help, and just we're always here for you. So all the best, man.
Excellent, and I'm sure I'll be enjoying life outside the party after this interview. So.
Well, we need to chat off the record as well to like talk some things. I'll set up a new party. It'd be fucking great. Get Jeremy on. I'm sure he wants to do it. Really.
Yeah. There's something going on. I don't know what, but there's something going on.
Well, keep us posted because I'm all over it. I just think it needs that recognizable face stuff. We've got one coming out with Laura Pidcock soon as well, and I asked her that question. So, chat us after. It'll be going out, but we'll talk about it after. It's just I've got a dog behind us here who's done my nut for the last 10 minutes. So I'm going to post them to the glue factory and then tell the other ones off. It'll be like you'll know by the trail of the dead. Now be quiet when I'm recording. Anyway, all the best, mate, and I'll be in touch and we'll have a good old chat about things there.
Good stuff. All right.
Take it easy, mate. All the best.
Enjoyed it. See you later.
See you later, man. Bye-bye.